So we are going to use an acronym to help us know where the trig functions are positive. And the acronym is all students take calculus. Oh, I know. All right, so we have quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. All students take calculus, but all we're using is the first letter here, the A, the S, the T, and the C, and those are corresponding to the first letter of your main trig functions. So your main trig functions are sine, cosine, and tangent. So I'm going to move these around just a little bit here. Okay, I've got sine is for the students. Then I have cosine, that's the one for calculus. Tangent, that's for the take. And then every single trig function in quadrant 1 is positive. So I'm going to put all of these ones, but I'm also going to come in and put in sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, now besides your main trig functions, the reciprocal function, because you know the answer to sine is the y-coordinate. And so if the answer to sine is the y-coordinate, the answer to cosecant is the y-coordinate flipped over. That's not going to change the sign by taking the reciprocal. So the ones that are also positive in here that are just not explicitly stated, since sine's reciprocal function is cosecant, cosecant is also positive in quadrant 2. Okay, then tangent is positive in quadrant 3, and the reciprocal function for tangent is cotangent. So implied there, if tangent is positive in 3, then so is cotangent. And then the reciprocal function for cosine is secant. And so it's implied that secant is also positive in quadrant 4. I'm just going to emphasize, because sometimes you remember this little device here and you're like, what is it for again? So I just want to emphasize that my graph, see on the middle, it kind of makes a plus sign. So this is where my trig functions are positive. This is a big shortcut, because if you were to look at a unit circle, like if you know that the answer to of sine of an angle is the y-coordinate, think about where are your y-coordinates positive. Well, they'd be positive in quadrant 1 because you go right up. They'd be positive in quadrant 2 because left up. So no surprise, sine is positive in quadrants 1 and 2. Or cosine is the x coordinate. And so we're like, well, where is cosine positive is the same thing as saying where is the x coordinate positive. And so going right up or right down, the x coordinate's positive, so cosine's positive in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 4. But often you don't want to think that hard about it. So using this little device makes it a little bit faster to get at which of the quadrants the trig functions are positive. Later we'll be drawing triangles inside of this and then answering some questions. But for right now, we just want to be able to answer questions like this. It says, determine the quadrant in which the terminal side of theta lies. Okay, so my angle, cosecant is greater than 0 is the same thing as saying that cosecant is positive. So if cosecant is positive, we know that that's happening in quadrant 2, that's one place. And then all trig functions are positive in quadrant 1. So it could also happen in 1. Okay, then, and the cosine is less than 0, which is another way of saying that the cosine is negative. Well, if the cosine is positive, all trig functions are positive in quadrant 1, and cosine is positive in quadrant 4, well then cosine is negative in quadrants 2 and 3. Okay, so I'm going to put here 2 and 3. Okay. And so our angle, it's got to make both of these true. So the only quadrant that we could have as our answer, the quadrant that makes both of these statements true, is they both have 2 in. So the answer for this one is going to be quadrant 2. Okay, so let's do just one more. Okay, this one says that the cotangent of theta is greater than 0, which is the same thing as saying that the cotangent's positive. So if cotangent is positive, all trig functions are positive in quadrant 1. Cotangent's positive in quadrant 3, so it's going to be 1 and 3 are my options there. Okay, and the sine is greater than 0, which is the same thing as saying sine is positive, and sine is positive in quadrant 1, because all trig functions are positive there, and then it is also positive in quadrant 2. So for both of these statements to be true, that's going to only happen in quadrant 1. So my answer is going to be quadrant 1. Okay, so quick recap again. All students take calculus. The first A and then S, T, C is just standing for all. S for sine, T for tangent, C for cosine. And then the reciprocal function that goes with your main functions, and it is not an alliteration. Sine does not go with secant, right? Sine goes with cosecant. So sine and cosecant, cosine and secant, tangent and cotangent are positive in those quadrants.